In Part 1, we learn that there are 3 sections in Revelation 14, corresponding to Mark 4:26 through 29, where Jesus describes 3 stages leading to the harvest: the blade, the ear, and the full grain in the ear. So, when we consider the 3rd section in Revelation 14, this is exactly what we find: a harvest and separation. All of this begins with the firstfruits. Then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. Some believe that the 144,000 or firstfruits in this chapter are different from those in chapter 7. But we need to remember that Revelation is not chronological but multifaceted. Note that we are told that they have his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. Now, here's what we read in chapter 7. Saying, "Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel." Where are these 144,000 sealed? On their foreheads. Does this not correspond to his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads? We should also make note of the fact that the sealing of the servants of God takes place just before the opening of the 7th seal. The word foreheads is found just 8 times in the King James New Testament, all of them in Revelation. In his book Number in Scripture, Bullinger states that 8 is the number especially associated with resurrection and regeneration, and the beginning of a new era or order. Regeneration is the start of a new cycle of sowing and reaping, a result of harvest and separation. Didn't Christ and the apostles set a new beginning in motion after their resurrection? Of the 8 times this word is found, 4 refer to the seal of God, and 4 to the mark of the beast. To be sealed on the forehead means to have the name of Christ and the Father written on it. They are synonymous. The idea of a seal leads to the following. Nevertheless, the solid foundation of God stands, having this seal. The Lord knows those who are his, and let everyone who names the name of Christ depart from iniquity. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honor and some for dishonor. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from the latter, he will be a vessel for honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. Here we find that the seal of God refers to the great house of God, consisting of both vessels of gold and silver, as well as wood and clay. As Paul states, if anyone cleanses himself from the latter, he will be a vessel of honor. In other words, we move from being a vessel of dishonor to one of honor. All of us start as vessels of dishonor, for when we are first brought to Christ, we bring our baggage with us and must be sanctified by the dynamic work of his Spirit. This is the purpose of the wilderness. A good example is seen in the disciples before their upper room experience. Did they not act dishonorably before this phenomenon? Didn't all the disciples flee when they came and took Jesus at Gethsemane? Yet, consider what Jesus told them before his betrayal. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. By the way, the word seal is found 16 times in the King James New Testament. 16 denotes love. This is appropriate, for only love gives us the ability to lay down our lives for Christ and others. It is this love or self-sacrifice that saturates the gospel with grace, moving us from vessels of dishonor to vessels of honor. Now, let me say up front that I am careful about the difference between Jew and Gentile. No doubt, Paul expressed this difference many times, But we must always come back to the fact that fleshly lineage no longer plays a part in his kingdom. The natural was first, but now the spiritual takes precedence. Nonetheless, there is a difference between Jew and Gentile that needs to be applied to the firstfruits in Revelation 7. Look once more at the following. Saying, "Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel." See the phrase, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel? Now, a few verses later, we read the following. "After this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands." Do you see the difference? The 144,000 are taken from the tribes of Israel, but the great multitude consists of every nation. Doesn't this align with the fact that salvation began with the Jews and then later was granted to the Gentiles? This theme is plain in the book of Acts as well as in Paul's letters. Jesus said, "Salvation is of the Jews." So why is this important? Because it shows that the 144,000 are Jewish, not Gentile, and this distinction is necessary to our understanding as long as we don't allow favoritism to enter the equation. For it is not about favoritism, but God's purpose. Yes, God used Israel to bring in the law and its spiritual essence through Christ. So, we should always honor Israel for this reason, but I emphasize, fleshly lineage no longer matters, for all of his people are now Israel. One of the best explanations of this distinction is in Romans chapter 11, where Paul speaks of natural Israel as the dough offered as firstfruits and the root with its branches. Paul states that some of the natural branches of this cultivated olive tree of Israel were broken off so that the wild olive shoot of the Gentiles could be grafted in. Since the Gentiles are grafted into Israel, there is but one olive tree. On a side note, this distinction also explains the difference between the great red dragon of Revelation 12 as opposed to the beast rising out of the sea in Revelation 13. Though both have 7 heads and 10 horns, there is a reason for the difference, especially when we consider that the dragon gives its power and throne and great authority to the beast after it has been cast down to the earth in Revelation 12. I address these symbolisms in my series on the beast, as well as in other studies. Now take a look at Romans 11:16 from the New King James Version. "For if the first fruit is holy, the lump is also holy, and if the root is holy, so are the branches." Here we see that Paul separates the first fruit from the lump, the root from the branches. This being the case, then who are the first fruit and root? Paul tells us earlier in the chapter. But what does the divine response say to him? "I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. Even so then, at this present time, there is a remnant according to the election of grace." What then? Israel has not obtained what it seeks, but the elect have obtained it, and the rest were blinded. Who are the firstfruits? They are those whom Paul called the remnant or elect. Let's pick up from here in the next study.